The connection kit includes a length of flexible conduit along with 2 packages and an install guide. The CARAPACE power and end connection kit can be completed using standard electrical and plumbing tools. It is wise to inventory the parts and confirm the items by the table of contents found in the install guides. We will look closer into these parts during the installation process. Be sure to leave yourself with a 7-foot tail of CARAPACE pipe to perform the power connection. Using your tape measure, measure and mark the pipe at 78 inches. I would commonly draw a line around the circumference of the pipe. This will help guide you with scoring the outer jacket of the CARAPACE water pipe. Next, using a utility knife, score the marker line you just made around the circumference of the pipe. It is extremely important that you score the outer blue CARAPACE jacket only. You do not want to cut all the way through, as you will risk damage to the heat line, heating cable, and the water pipe underneath. Using the utility knife, score along the blue CARAPACE jacket next to the heating cable. Repeat this on both sides. I am very cautious as not to risk damage to the heating cable. It is wise to score the blue CARAPACE jacket here as well. Using a micro shear or diagonal plier, wedge either tool between the heating cable and the pipe to separate the blue CARAPACE jacket. Repeat this process on the other side. Next, using a linesman plier, grip the blue CARAPACE jacket and peel the jacket back. I have found it is easier to get the CARAPACE jacket started by rolling it over the linesman plier, using it as leverage. Take notice the lighter colored blue at the cut lines. This is a condition when the CARAPACE sheath has been scored only and was not cut all the way through. This is an ideal condition, as it will provide you with assurance that the heater would not have been compromised during the extraction process. Continue peeling the sheath all the way back to the 78-inch mark. Using the linesman plier, peel and remove the CARAPACE jacket. Using the micro shear or diagonal plier, cut the score line to remove the remaining CARAPACE jacket. Inspect the heating cable to ensure that the heating cable has not been mechanically injured. Slide the large 6-inch long heat shrink over the pipe and heating cable past the 78-inch mark. Slide the flexible conduit over the length of the heating cable. Apply a nylon cable tie approximately 3.5 inches from the 78-inch mark. Slide the large heat shrink towards the cable tie. Position the heat shrink so that it is about 1/4 inch from the cable tie. Using a heat gun, apply even heat across the heat shrink. I would typically start in the middle and work out to the ends. Be careful not to apply too much heat to the pipe or flexible conduit. The heat shrink is serving as a strain relief and is not intended to make a seal. Apply heat until fully recovered. Adhesive should be visible on the CARAPACE pipe and the flexible conduit. Allow the heat shrink to cool before proceeding. A damp cloth or rag can help speed up the cooling process. Measuring from the heat shrink, mark a minimum length of 6 inches on the water pipe and cut the water pipe with a pipe cutting tool. This could be adjusted to a longer length if required, but we would not suggest cutting any shorter than 6 inches from the heat shrink. This will provide an appropriate length for applying the desired plumbing fitting. Slide the large Oetiker clamp over the flexible conduit. Slide the threaded gland with the machine screws over the heating cable and fit the threaded portion of the fitting into the flexible conduit. Press the threaded gland firmly into the flexible conduit. Slide the red heater grommet onto the heating cable and position inside the threaded gland. Slide the remaining threaded gland onto the heating cable and position it over top of the red grommet. Line up the machine screw threads and tighten with a screwdriver. This will compress and seal the heating cable. Position the large Oetiker clamp at the end of the flexible conduit. Firmly press and hold the threaded gland into the conduit and compress the Oetiker crimp using an Oetiker crimping tool. This will bind and lock the threaded gland into the flexible conduit. From the end of the heating cable, measure and mark the heating cable at 5 inches. Splicing the heating cable should be carried out by a qualified electrician. Follow the steps as seen in the install instructions. Splice completed, slide the yellow, green heat shrink sleeve onto the twisted ground braid. Apply even heat using a heat gun. Do not burn the heat shrink. Slide the small 1/2-inch heat shrink onto the heating cable assembly. Next, trim the long 1/8 inch heat shrinks to the desired length. Slide them over each bus wire. Once again, apply even heat using the heat gun. Position the 1/2-inch shrink so that it is providing equal coverage over the bus wires and the white inner jacket. Pinch the heat shrink using needle nose pliers to separate the bus wires. Slide the junction box sealing gasket over the heating cable assembly and position it onto the threaded sealing gland. Install the heating cable assembly and threaded gland into your junction box, making sure the sealing gasket is positioned properly against the junction box. Slide the locking nut over the heating cable assembly and be sure that the locking nut is oriented properly. Thread the locking nut onto the threaded gland. Lock the nut into place. Install the flexible conduit clips to the wall using a screw and tighten the clips into place. Using a large plier or channel lock, pinch the clip so that the barbs engage. This tutorial completes the installation of the power termination of the CARAPACE. We are going to discuss the procedures for installing the end termination of the CARAPACE. The end termination requires similar preparation to the power termination, but the lengths are much shorter. Measure the pipe 8 inches from the end and mark its location. Using a utility knife, score the marker line you just made around the circumference of the pipe. You do not want to cut all the way through as you will risk damage to the heat line heating cable and the water pipe underneath. Score along the blue CARAPACE jacket next to the heating cable. Repeat this on both sides. I would score the CARAPACE jacket here as well to reduce the risk of heating cable damage. Using a micro shear or diagonal plier, wedge either tool between the heating cable and the pipe to separate the blue CARAPACE jacket. Repeat this process on the other side. Next, using a plier, grip the blue CARAPACE jacket and peel the jacket back. I have found it is easier to get the CARAPACE jacket started by rolling it over the plier using it as leverage. Remove the CARAPACE jacketing and inspect the heating cable to ensure there isn't any damage to the heating cable jacket. From the end of the heating cable, measure and mark a distance of 5 inches. Cut the heating cable at the 5-inch mark. Do not cut the pipe. A 1/2 inch from the end of the heating cable, remove the black outer jacket. Trim off and remove all the ground braid so that the white inner jacket is left exposed. Apply the small heat shrink over the white inner jacket associated to the heating cable. It is important that this heat shrink is not installed over top of the black heating cable jacket. Apply heat and make sure adhesive flows out at both ends. Pinch the end using the needle nose plier to seal. Hold this position for a few seconds to ensure the seal is made. Using the supplied silicone, apply silicone to the inside of the heating cable boot. Then press the boot over the heating cable until it is fully inserted. Slide the Oetiker crimp onto the boot and compress using the Oetiker crimping tool. Repeat with a second Oetiker crimp. Slide the large heat shrink over the end termination, providing equal spacing on the CARAPACE jacket and the boot. Apply even heat across the heat shrink. Start in the middle and work out to the ends. Adhesive should be visible from both ends and should continue around the circumference of the heat shrink. Allow the heat shrink to cool before applying plumbing fittings. This tutorial completes the installation of the end termination of the CARAPACE.